I know that impulsivity is a big thing with me. And I was thinking about, would that lead to me maybe firing my gun quicker or doing something? And it really wouldn't. Because when I was in a high stress situation, I don't know if it's the adrenaline acting like Adderall, but everything slows down for me and it's by the numbers. It's when I get a call at 7 a.m. and the court officer's like, hey, we got a big case today. Where the hell's the evidence? And I realize it's like in my trunk, that's where you get jammed up. Or the person you arrested is still in your trunk. No, I'm only kidding.
ADHD Rewired, episode 380. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host and I have ADHD. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection and you are not alone. Go to ADHDrewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter. You can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups, and you can learn all about our intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. You can do all of this at our website, ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. Today's guest is Jennifer G. Jennifer was born and raised on Martha's Vineyard in the 1960s. She was recently diagnosed with ADHD. She was heavily influenced by Nancy Drew books and the Happy Hollisters. She started her career in law enforcement on the mean streets of her town as a meter maid and became an emergency dispatcher and then a police officer like her father. The rest is a story of struggle and triumph, and then struggle again, against and with ADHD. Life-changing, to say the least. So, Jen, thank you so much for being here. I'm just thrilled to have you. I think you have a really interesting story.
Thank you, Eric.
So I want to ask you, what was it that brought you to get that diagnosis?
It was about 5 years ago. I was on my 38th therapist probably. And she mentioned, have you ever been tested for ADHD? And she started the ball rolling. It never even occurred to me. Okay.
And was part of that, you were struggling in professional life, personal life?
Did all of them.
All of them. Relationships.
I've been in and out of counseling. I've had an issue with anxiety and depression, and we were always trying to figure out where to put me. Am I on a scale of bipolar? Am I manic? And then am I a severe depressed? I mean, it never had a clear outcome. I didn't know what was wrong, and it was just a struggle. I thought it was just me.
So you had said when we first talked a couple months ago that when you discovered my podcast, you were listening to it and you said that my podcast saved your life.
It did. So before I knew I had ADHD, there were some dark times. And once I was diagnosed, I think it got even worse for a bit because I was really bummed out about all that I had lost or messed up and the people I had let down and myself and mistakes and just constantly regrouping and I felt depleted. My mom had passed and I had lost my brother and I was so down and I started listening. And so you and so many of the people on, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. These are my people. And more importantly, it wasn't my fault. And I can't tell you enough. And also I love the way you do your podcast because you get on and you get into it because you have ADHD and you know that if you're going to do a bunch of chit chat or something like that, half of us are going to go wander off and start cleaning our, the filter underneath our refrigerator, which I just did yesterday.
I think I need to clean that.
I just did mine with Q-tips. I love it.
So, all right. So you started working as a police officer. How old were you?
Well, I started as a meter maid at 16 and a half.
Okay.
And then I went into dispatch. Then I went to college, still dispatching. And then I think I was 26 when I actually got in, which was very difficult because the chief decided to do a GED test instead of one of the common sense tests. And when I was in college, my English teacher was like, I love your stories, but there's something wrong with you. We think you're dyslexic. And they did one of those 5-hour tests. And I'll never forget, the guy sat down and he said, well, you got a 5th grade math level and a 6th grade spelling level, but abstract thinking, you are unchartable.
Wow.
I was like, and then they just left it at that. So yeah, I had to hire a tutor from Sylvan Learning Center and to pass that test because that was going to be my downfall, just to get my foot in the door.
No, I remember you sharing something with me about, I think it was at the police academy, and there was was there a test? Well, you know what I'm talking about?
I'm surprised you hadn't heard about me before because I did win the fastest handcuffing technique. And the troopers double checked my cuffs. They thought I might have rigged them. That was my big claim to fame. I do think I did well because of the nutrition and all the exercise in the academy. I look back and I'm like, how did I do 14 weeks sitting at attention, listening, taking notes? First, I wanted it so badly, but secondly, I think that did play a big part.
But wasn't there also a scenario where you realized that you brought your gun into somewhere that you weren't supposed to have the gun? Oh God,
that could have gotten me. We're on, I think it was like the 13th week of the police academy, and they give you a sheet and they're like, okay, this is week 17, maybe range day. This is range day. And the sheet said about 500 times, do not bring ammo. We give you the ammo. You bring ammo. You're in so much trouble. Do not bring ammo. So I brought the list to the gun officer at my department. I said, here's what I need. The next morning he handed me a bag. I never even opened it to check. And I got up there and we got ready to go to the range. I went in the bathroom with the bag. I unzipped it to grab something, and every single magazine had a bullet in it. And I was standing there and I was like, can I flush them all? Like, would they go down? And if they don't, what would happen to me? Like standing there shaking. I went to the drill instructor's room and they actually, they gave you no breaks, but they said, what's wrong? Because I was so pale and I was shaking and I'm like, I don't know how this happened. I didn't check. And I should have. And they weren't happy. They made some calls and I didn't leave. I got to stay. Mm. There was another time.
Please go. Yeah.
Well, once I was out of the academy, I was new. Not many people knew me on the department as far as out in the real world. And they wanted to use me for a drug call, undercover drug, So back then we had these big, no cell phones. We had these big block radios they were just big, like a brick. They used to call them bricks. So they gave me that to shove in my purse. And I met the informant and he drove me. We picked up the dealer and then went to another dealer's house. And it's a Friday night. And I don't know what was up, but my radio was on that whole time. And it didn't squawk because it would pick up other departments. We get out, they're walking almost into the house and my radio goes off. Could you imagine? Could you imagine?
Oh my God.
I effing was like pulling that out, turned it off and shoved it back in and got in there shaking like a leaf. So those are things I think where ADHD can bite you. I needed to check that.
Mm. And we often hear about a lot of people with ADHD or police and emergency room technicians and paramedics, that there's a lot of ADHD in those fields. I don't think I've actually interviewed too many people in those fields though. So it's really kind of fun to be able to have have you on here to talk about this.
I think there is, Eric. And I know that impulsivity is a big thing with me. And I was thinking about, would that lead to me maybe firing my gun quicker or doing something? And it really wouldn't. Because when I was in a high stress situation, I don't know if it's the adrenaline acting like Adderall, but everything slows down for me and it's by the numbers. It's when I get a call at 7 a.m. and the court officer's like, hey, we got a big case today. Where the hell's the evidence? And I realize it's like in my trunk, that's where you get jammed up. Or the person you arrested is still in your trunk. No, I'm only kidding. Seriously though, I'll give you another, if you want, example. Yeah. I don't know if I should admit to this, but I'd only been on 3 months. Guy steals a van out of my town, does an armed robbery 2 towns over. I hear it, get on the highway. He bombs by. I go after him. Well, don't ask me if I'm going east or west, because I told all my backup I was going west when I was going east. So everyone got on this highway. Everyone's bombing the wrong way. Finally, one of the guys that knew me well said, Jen, are you heading towards this town or this town? Yeah. So there you go. It all ended well. My sergeant came up and said, why the hell would you do that? And I just was like, oh, I didn't want you to mess up my arrest. I mean, it was really mortifying.
I have dyslexia, I got the wrong direction.
Well, it's like I had to tell the dispatchers, if I'm going to domestic, don't tell me the bad guy's in the southeast corner of the house. If I'm facing the house, is he on the right side, in the back? Stuff like that. Yeah. Or cars. Don't give me the make, model, brand. Tell me what color, how many doors, and tell me where the bumper. And that might be with a lot of people, but east, west, things like that. Paperwork. Oh. It was tough.
Yeah.
I do much better in person.
So do you think that there were you more willing to take risks and enter dangerous situations? Yeah.
I never thought, but I thought. I didn't think twice. Like I was, the one thing about police, there are some that shouldn't be. And then there are some are meant to be, and they will understand that. It's what you do. You really want to help people. And it's a very strong feeling. But with the ADHD, I was hyper prepared. My trunk had everything that could ever happen. I had a rope, which I believed to be fire resistant. And I remember my sergeant going, you're not supposed to go in burning buildings. And I'm like, Sarge, 3 a.m, there's a kid inside screaming. I'm going to tie it on my waist. I'll run in before the fire department because they were sleeping at the time. They might take them a minute and I'll get them. But if I pass out, you can at least pull me out of the building. And then I had a floaty device and he's like, why? He's going through my trunk. He's like, why? What are you, Baywatch? Why do you have one of these floaty things? I'm like, well, if the ice breaks and some kid, and he goes, you wait for the fire department. I'm like, who's going to do that? And I
You're
had
like MacGyver.
I had dog muzzles, dog bones. You serve a warrant or you're trying to go somewhere. I had like things to cut everything. And oh my gosh, you name it, I had it. And they all teased me, but grudgingly would be like, hey, do you have bolt cutters in your car?
Of course
I
do.
So when you say, would I take a risk? I don't think I would. I wasn't afraid to take a risk, but I wasn't sloppy. That's where your training comes in. But I definitely wasn't afraid to get it right up front. I remember there was supposed to be a guy with a gun walking around a car at a rest stop, and it was in our sector. And I parked far away. I got out my binoculars. I wasn't rushing. And I remember an officer from another town running by me saying, oh, it'll be okay. I'm going up. And I was thinking, why are we rushing? I don't know. So I really wonder if adrenaline for ADHD is like Adderall where it slows you down. Do you know?
Well, when I think about what you're describing there, when I used to work in residential treatment and we often had some very aggressive kids.
Oh, man.
And we would have these, it was like when the shit was literally hitting the fan, and sometimes literal shit was hitting the fan when you worked in residential. like, kids are being aggressive, throwing furniture. Like, I mean, my mind was just so calm, and I
think there's something to it.
Yeah. And it's where I struggled. And I think it sounds like you did too, is after the event, having to write out the documentation about what happened.
Oh my God. It was horrible. I think there's something, we're going to look into that. And because I think ADHD would make you, what I think is supervisors in firefighting, law enforcement, or anything need to understand ADHD. So if they have someone on their force who is really well and charismatic and good with people, but is struggling here, they're not going to be deemed like lazy, or they just don't like their paperwork. And they'll be able to work with them. But I don't know. It's not really that group. One of the things that we do know about the ADHD brain is that it's actually an underactive brain, which is why we tend to do like adrenaline seeking kinds of things. Like I know for myself, probably the only activity that I think that I could probably do like unmedicated. And I don't know if I would still do this, but when I used to do a lot of like aggressive mountain biking where I'm on some like really technical trails, it's like, because you have to be so tuned in to everything that is happening that like your mind doesn't have, like, for me in those moments, it was like calm and quiet, and it was just focus. Aren't we kind of chasing dopamine all the time? Yeah. Yeah. Like the dopamine hunters. Yeah, we really are. And I get bored easy. And in my law enforcement, I had so many titles. And I remember one time I pulled a car over, and there were 4 men. We're talking the 80s, I think, early 90s, from Bogota, Colombia, all in suits. And I said, "May I see your green card?" And it wasn't green. I never knew that. So the next day I call up INS, and I'm like, "Hey, they're not green. Can we do a class?" I ended up doing a class with 76 people from all the towns, officers, and they taught us what they all look like. So I don't know what that has to do with anything, but I was always interested in getting things started, Like, I didn't understand it, so I was like, "Okay, can you come down and talk to us? Because this doesn't make sense." And Bogota too was like a big thing. So I was like, "Oh, you guys can go." There's too many of you. So what I want to do is I want to take a quick break. I know that you have your story of growing up. I know you had some really significant things happen in your life. There was trauma. You have a sibling who is still, like I said, an active drug and alcohol as addictions. So I want to kind of circle back to that when we come back, but let's take a quick break. So we will be right back. Support for this podcast comes from the ADHD reWired coaching community, which includes our award-winning coaching and accountability groups and our alumni membership community, because our alumni know that after coaching group ends, maintenance is next to level shit. Our 25th season is just a few weeks away. Sections 3 and 4 with Moira Mabin and Roxy Martin are now full with waitlists. Section 1 with me at 12 p.m. Central Time has 3 spots left, and our 2:30 p.m. Central session has just 1 spot left. Want to find out how you can get one of the last few spots? Go to coachingrewired.com. And if the timing might be better for your fall schedule, go to coachingrewired.com and add your name to our fall interest list. Every season, our coaching members do more than just learn how to plan their days, set ADHD-friendly goals, and track their habits. They also discover how to push beyond their comfort zones and how to modify their environments. And most of all, discover that they don't have to do any of this alone. Our award-winning coaching and accountability groups are not just about the skills. This is the group where connection and community can help us take our skills to the next level. So whether you are new to this podcast or you've been listening for a while, but you're unable to join our 25th season, head on over to coachingrewired.com and get your name added to the fall interest list, or go there now and see how to snag one of those last few spots with me.
And for all of our new members, we will see you in a couple weeks. And don't forget to read or listen to the One Thing book. And again, if you are wondering about our coaching groups, find out more by going to coachingrewired.com. That's coachingrewired.com. Okay, here we go. It's recording both of us, right? Take two. Next Monday, June 21st, it's happening again. We're reopening the virtual doors to the Adult Study Hall membership community. Not sure what that is? Check out adultstudyhall.com.
And guess where we're recording this? Oh, also surprise, it's MJ.
Hey, MJ.
Yep, we're in Adult Study Hall 24/7, but we like to call it ASH 24/7.
So what exactly is ASH 24/7?
Well, it's basically a room that's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, where the current founding members can jump in at any time or any day and get some work done. I mean, we're hanging in there right now, and I'm not going to lie, this is our second take of this. But earlier, somebody was making some phone calls and somebody was actually at work because they work from home to get some tasks done for their job. And I've even seen other people hop in to like clean their closet or cook dinner or attempt to record an ad.
Did I tell you what I did while I was in ASH 24/7, I think a week or two ago, and I was cleaning the kitchen and then making my lunch, and I had a really great insight into my own behavior that it really only happened because I was on camera, and so I became more sort of self-aware of my kind of what I do.
And what did you do?
So apparently I frequently walk away from the sink when the water is running, and I frequently walk away from the refrigerator door with it open. And it really clicked because my son is regularly asking me, Daddy, you don't have the water? Daddy, you don't have the fridge? Do you want me to close the fridge? Do you want me to turn off the water? The other thing that it really helps with is it's almost like rabbit hole prevention. So I came into Adult Study Hall today to record my ads, and I put on the screen that I am recording my ads. And I think for the first 2 hours, I did everything but record my ads. So I knew I needed to sort of step it up and increase my accountability around what I was actually doing. So I use a little third-party software to show what is on my screen on Zoom. So I have Adobe Audition, what I used to record my podcast with, showing on my screen on Zoom. And then I get a little notification blinking on Mighty Network, and I clicked on it, and I saw the white on the background from Mighty Network, and I realized, oh no, wait, I'm supposed to be recording my ads. And I think I pulled myself out of that hole in 3 seconds, which I think might be a world record.
Which is huge, because when you know that people are watching and you're putting out there what you're doing, it sort of brings us back to, oh, right, that's actually what I was supposed to do. Even if it takes us a little bit longer, because we have ADHD, but there's no shame here, right? Because we get it. And there's something about working with other people who have ADHD who just get it, that know sort of how to give those better, gentle reminders so that we can get back on track. And having other people there to kind of cheer us on that way and know what the struggle is really, really great to have.
And if just working virtually, having other people on screen isn't enough for you, we also have ASH Plus, and we have a handful of ASH Plus sessions. So these are the sessions that are guided and facilitated. But we have our ASH Plus Task Busters session, which we do weekly. It's a 2-hour session. You come in and you bring in one of those dreaded tasks. One of those things like, I don't know, recording a podcast ad or recording an episode of ADHD Diversified. Not that we're dreading it. It just started. Starting is hard, right? Or taxes, or I don't know.
There's just something about starting, and you say it on the podcast, that starting is the hardest part. And it really is. But once you get into it, it's so much Well, not so much, but usually it's easier after you've made the first step.
And so Task Busters kind of helps you start that dreaded task. Then halfway at the halfway point in Task Busters, you just kind of give a thumbs up, thumbs down. Like, are you on task? Are you like, how you doing? And then at the very end, it's kind of a wrap up. You share kind of how your work process went, maybe anything you learned from it. We also on Saturdays with Natalie Stark, we're doing she's doing a 2-hour clean and declutter with me session every Saturday. Sort of same idea. People are joining there to clean and declutter. I really need to hop into one of those. My house is I need help. Okay, so what else is there? There is the Ash Plus for people who are looking for a job. So we're doing things like filling out applications, updating your resume, LinkedIn stuff. So Kat Hoyer is hosting that once a week. We just added twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursday mornings. We have 2 of our alumni who are leading workout sessions for an hour, which I think is amazing. And I think one of the best things about that is, I think once you get there, right, the thing that I think you will find the most value in is if you maybe feel like it'd be nice if you can sort of push yourself a little bit more on your workout. Because if you're just by yourself, no one's going to say anything to you if you only do like 15 minutes on the treadmill or whatever, right?
It's so true.
But if you're in there for an hour with other people, like I promise you're gonna push yourself a little bit more and keep going. And that's twice a week. That's great, right? So it's an hour twice a week.
There's going to be more stuff coming because there's so many ideas and classic ADHD. We want to do them all, but they're going to roll out probably one by one, brick by brick, and sort of build up what else is going to be available. I know that every weekday there is a Ash 24/7 session that is hosted by some of the coaching group alumni members, myself included. I actually hop in on Sundays to plan my week. So if you need to get some planning done, join me on Sundays to sort of kick off your week, get a plan in place.
And I'm there Friday afternoons.
Oh yeah, you are in there Friday afternoons, aren't you? Pomodoro dance party. Really, really cool to see people jump in and get stuff done, and like things that they've been putting off for weeks or longer.
AdultStudyHall.com is where you go to join us. We are opening the doors on, what's the date again?
June 21st. Next Monday, June 21st.
Next Monday, June 21st at about noon o'clock Central Time.
So that's 12 o'clock Central. That is, oh my God, I just had it. 10 a.m. Pacific and 1 p.m. Eastern.
Nice job.
Thanks, buddy. I'm pretty good at this.
And if we have a repeat of what we did on our founders launch, where you can't actually join, it's only because I didn't refresh the page and actually publish the right one, and I fixed it really quickly. So just stick around and it'll get fixed, because we'll get like 1,000 emails like in 10 minutes, like we did on Founders Day.
Nobody panic. It's going to be okay.
Right. This is an ADHD owned business. Something is bound to go wrong, but we'll fix it.
And we'll probably fix it in Adult Study Hall, where you can go and join and get stuff done. And if you want to join in next Monday, June 21st, that's adultstudyhall.com.
Adultstudyhall.com. Oh, we forgot the call for jingles. We want to do a jingle. Hey, if you want to record a jingle and send it to me, send me a link to an MP3 with the subject line Ash Jingle.
That is going to be extremely fun.
Oh my gosh, please submit something. I will absolutely use it on the podcast. Adult Study Hall. Yes, let's end the ad. AdultStudyHall.com. All right, we are back. All right, so when we first talked, you were telling me a bit about your sister and your brother and even yourself, and you there was a lot of trauma, it sounded like, growing up.
Yes. Yeah. I'll dive in. Well, I had an older sister, and thinking back, there was an accident when she was very young, like 3, and she did have a head injury. And I know there's some connection they're finding now, because she was very cruel to me. She was 6 years older. And It was very traumatic. It was, do you want an example?
Sure.
A lot of it involved things like, I was very young. We're saying maybe 5. Oh my God, I've hired someone to kill you and I can't undo it. And their name's Marky and Jeanette, and probably 7 at that one. Or she would sneak in my room knowing I'm awake with a knife. And when I would look over at her, she'd put it behind her back really quick and go, oh, I didn't know you were awake.
Oh my gosh.
Shoving pills in my mouth and saying they were drugs and trying to make me swallow them. And it was constant.
Wow.
Rosie Redhead, the witch who was after me. And and I believed it. I was just a little girl. I was like, damn.
So you had to be hyper vigilant for like all grown up.
Even when I was older, like 10 or 11, walking home from school, and I just realized like 2 years ago, and it made me cry. A car would slow down and I'd turn into the person's driveway in case it was them. And you know what I'm realizing, Eric? One of the areas that always happened was right where there was a stop sign. They were slowing down for a stop sign. You know what I mean? But I was like, okay, that's ADHD. I didn't even put it. But she, it was very, very, very difficult. And then she started drug and alcohol at a young age. And that was a whole other thing that took over the family. But I definitely was hypervigilant, and I hate bullies. And I think it shaped me going to law enforcement. I mean, I hate bullies and I want to feel safe. Well, I'll get the bad guy and I'll have a gun. I'm safe. Except I didn't know I wasn't safe for myself.
So have you ever explored like maybe the role of PTSD in growing up?
I've been diagnosed with it a few times. Being in law enforcement, I have an aversion to it because we always think of it as this person who got shot or a soldier, but there's so much more information. And I definitely think that is something I have to look at. For some reason, I'm like, oh, I don't want that. And I don't know, Eric. I'll have to look at it. But there was that trauma, and then there was just, I discovered alcohol at a young age, and I remember that added to me being impulsive, but it also added to me getting myself in some pretty dangerous situations once or twice. And thank God I stopped when I did. I don't think I would have had a career, that's for sure. But I do think when I did drink alcohol, I wasn't as anxious, and I just didn't care, and I wasn't worried. So that was an interesting wrinkle.
What do you think it was that helped you stop the drinking that you were doing?
I was living in Boston, and it was back when they were having those big meetings, because this is how my mind works. Back when they had a lot of minorities being put on departments that had lower test grades. Remember all that hoopla? I wasn't upset about that at all. I supported it, but they were having a rally, and I thought, what a great way to meet guys. So I went to the rally. I was young. I went with a girlfriend, and boy, did we party. And I woke up and I started puking blood, lots of it.
Okay.
So, yeah. And I went to the ER, and I had almost choked to death as a kid. So I had a real problem with fear of choking. And the doctor's like, well, I'm going to have to put this up your nose and down your throat, start getting that blood out. And I just looked at her and I said, okay, you got to tell me how to do this the first time, because there's no way you're going to be able to do it the second. And then after they got me into a room, I said, okay, what do I have to do to never have that happen? They said, don't drink and manage your stress. So I did one. And in the beginning, I did go to some AA meetings and stuff, because I was like, okay, I got to figure this out. And I got a therapist, and everyone, even the AA people, were like, I think you used it as medication, because you're not really, I didn't have as good as stories as they did, for one thing. And God, I wish I could have stayed with them, because what a supportive, incredible group of human beings. But we did decide that it was medicating, because I didn't really have any of the other stuff that goes with it, I guess. Does that make sense?
Don't you think, though, that most alcoholism starts as self-medicating?
Yeah, I think at 23, if I didn't stop, I wouldn't be here. I really wouldn't. And bad thing is, no one ever thought I was as drunk as I was. So I remember my dad once saying, Jen, whose car's on the lawn? And I was like, I have no fucking idea.
Oh, God.
Like, I'll make some calls. We'll see whose it is. Yeah. Good times. But yeah, so growing up and schooling was difficult. And back then on the Vineyard, everyone loved me. I was a good kid, class clown, 8th grade.
You were actually voted class clown.
I was actually voted. Yes. Thank you. But what's interesting, talk about low self-esteem. The Boys and Girls Club had awards night and I got most improved for girls softball, probably because I couldn't get any worse. And it was a huge thing and so many people. And I wouldn't walk up because I knew that it was a mistake. Yeah. And then my mom went back up and said, can you say your name again? Because I really wanted to walk up once I realized it really was me. I did get something, but, stuff like that, the usual. I mean, just feeling stupid, doing an algebra test. And my friend who ended up right now, she's like huge partner in this world-renowned accounting firm. She's still sitting doing the algebra test and I'm the first one done. And I bring it up to my teacher and I just cry because I know there's no way I did it right. And he puts me on his lap lovingly, not the other way. And, it's like, it's okay, Jen, don't worry. And that's how I got through school. Just being a nice person.
There's value in being nice, So let me ask you. So, all right, there's been a lot of sort of significant events in your life that have shaped who you are now. Growing up, what were your parents like?
My dad was blue collar and hard worker, very funny, very distant. But it was the 50s. I think looking back, he definitely had depression. And my mom was just lost her a year ago. She was, I think she might have had a little bit, but she was very busy, always busy, a very busy person. Even in her last year of life, it could drive me crazy. She, full of cancer, not doing well out there trying to paint a fence. She's just very driven. We had a lot of, my brother, who I lost 2 years ago, had a huge struggle with addiction. And my sister, the older one, is still in the throes of it. So it really shaped us. And my grandfather, I remember him coming and asking for a few dollars or sleeping out in our truck. My uncle, we're just riddled with a lot of sadness. I have people who, you see their lives and I think, wow, that could have been us. That movie, Us, have you seen it? Us.
I don't know.
Oh, I won't go into it.
Sometimes I see movies and I don't remember that I've seen them. So,
Eric, do you ever tell someone, I just read the best book and you tell them about it and they ask you who it's from and you don't? And I don't you feel like you lose credibility? Like, I feel like people think I'm making shit up.
No, I don't, because I just know that the part of my brain that remembers names just doesn't work very well. But I remember the details about stuff, just not be like the title, right? It's like, when I used to do my clinical work and I used to see clients one-on-one, I can't tell you how many times I had clients who I would work with for years, where like in the middle of a session, I'd have to just glance down at the folder, like that was in my lap, because like I couldn't recall like their name in the moment. Like,
that makes me so happy.
And it's
makes me so happy. Yeah.
But often I would tell the client that I would be like, my brain just did a funny thing. Right. Like,
I love that.
Right. Cause it's like, it doesn't make me care unless it's like, it's literally part of my brain isn't functioning the way it's supposed to. Right.
Well, that's what I love about you and the podcast is it's just out there. And I used to cover myself. And there were so many eye rolls in my family, or like, oh, Jen's going off the deep end. And I have a younger sister, and I disappointed her and let her down a lot in life. Lots of broken promises, late, not showing up, wanting to do something, then backing out. And the kindest thing she ever said was once I moved to where she is and we're around each other more, she said, you know what, Jen, I forgive you because I see how hard you work at trying to work with the ADHD. Mm. And that meant a lot.
That's huge. I mean,
yeah.
You know, I think the thing that is so important too is that we can sort of extend that to ourselves. Is that
that's the tricky part.
Yeah. But that ability to forgive ourselves because we are, you know, I think that we are trying so hard and we are going to make mistakes and screw stuff up and, you know, walk into the sting with the radio still on.
Yeah.
And
sometimes like I'll meet someone and it'll be a great connection and I walk away and I'm just like, Jen, you're so full of shit. You're never going to be able to keep this up. Or I think like, you know how they say in a relationship, they can tell if it's going to last as long as there's no contempt for the partner. Well, I started to have contempt for myself. And that's very dangerous when you have that real mocking, like, yeah, you're just great, Jen. They just think you're great, but you're not going to be able to follow through. Who are you kidding? Those are dark days.
You know, when I'm doing the work in my coaching groups and, you know, I can say this in so many different ways, but no matter what this struggle is that someone is trying to work on, that self-compassion is the way forward. And because if, you know, we're going to make mistakes and we're going to repeat the same mistakes that we swore we were not going to make again. Right.
Yes.
And if we can't like it, and I thought that beating ourselves up would be a helpful strategy. I would, you know, I'd come up with some of the best ways to beat ourselves up. But
you'd hand out whips.
Right. And
it's true.
And having self-compassion doesn't mean that you're, you know, throwing your hands up in the air and saying, oh, well, fuck it. I can't do it. So I'm not going to try. It's saying, you know what, I am trying and I'm going to screw it up and I'm going to get back up and I'm going to try again.
And also I'm learning, and I did say the reason why I wanted to mention Jason Faulkner and his podcast, Old Dirty Boston, which is awesome. But what's really awesome about Jason on top of that is I called him. I told him a story when I was a nanny in Boston. I almost got myself killed because I was drinking and mouthing off and being impulsive. And I didn't want to go on the show. I just wanted to tell him. And it turns out now I book for him. And what I like about him was he totally accepts me and he'll be like, hey, can you like maybe run my Facebook page? And I'm like, absolutely not. I'm not wired that way. And here's what you have to do to work with me. And he's like, you're the best. You're awesome. Even with all my foibles. And I'm learning to, I think a lot of people with ADHD, like you go to TJ Maxx with all those cool, or Staples, all those cool organizers. And we're like, this is the one. We just got to find what works and stick with it. And at 57, I found it. You know, now I have between my phone and having 10 alarms a day and a book that's easy for me to understand. I can do it. And the other thing is sometimes ADHD wins and you just got to say, right. Okay, you won
that's
today.
Right. So what I want to do is I want to take one more quick break. When we come back, Jen, I am hoping that you will share with us how the heck you got into getting a collection of erotic penis rocks. So we will be right back. Whether you're new to the podcast or you're a long-time listener, I just want to let everyone know about all of our other podcasts that we have here on the ADHD reWired Podcast Network. Check out ADHD Essentials with Brendan Mahan, Hacking Your ADHD with Will Kerb, ADHD Diversified with MJ Siemens, and The ADHD Friendly Lifestyle with Moira Mabin. You can find all of these podcasts on our podcast network page at ADHDrewired.com. And meet everyone from the ADHD reWired Podcast Network every second Tuesday of the month at 12:30 p.m. Central for an hour of live Q&A on Zoom. To register, go to ADHDrewired.com/events. And don't forget to hit subscribe and leave those ratings and reviews for this and all of our other podcasts, because doing that does help other people find our shows. Thank you so much for listening and for sharing this and all of our podcasts with others in the ADHD community. Again, check out our podcast network page at ADHDrewired.com and register for our live Q&A at ADHDrewired.com/events. Hey there, ADHD Rewired listeners. Hey, I want to talk to all of you who have been considering possibly becoming a patron or who have become patrons in the past, and maybe you didn't know it, but maybe your credit card lapsed or something changed. I've noticed in the last few months we've had a little bit of a dip with our patrons, and this does happen. But I wanted to really talk to you, those listeners who listen week after week, who really, truly get a lot of value out of this podcast, out of all the work that we are doing over here. And especially those listeners who may never join one of our coaching groups or be a paying member of one of our communities. I want to talk specifically to you. If you are finding value, if you're finding help, support, connection, ideas, things that are helping your ADHD and are making a difference in your life, I would really like to ask you, what is that worth to you? Is that worth $1 an episode? A couple bucks a month? $5 a month? You know, about 6 months ago in January, I said I was going to do a 6-month experiment where I'm doing ad-free episodes for patrons who give at the $5 a month level. And there do seem to be a handful of you who are listening to those ad-free episodes. It looks like about, on average, about a dozen people listen per episode to those ad-free episodes. And that's great. I would love to see some more people take advantage of that. So if you are a patron at the $5 a month level, take advantage of that so I know it is worth continuing to create a separate ad-free episode for you. Because I'm always trying to evaluate the things that I'm doing with my time. And in order to, and this is something we teach in our coaching groups, in order to really grow the things that matter most, sometimes we need to cut the things that aren't producing what we want out of them. So I do want to continue maintaining and promoting this Patreon community. It does mean the world to me that right now we have 154 active patrons that are contributing just under $1,200 a month total. And that's amazing. That helps pay for our all the editing that we have for the podcast and a little bit more. But we would like to continue to grow the podcast and the podcast network. Now think about this almost like NPR. Right now, my local NPR station, WBEZ, in Chicago, is doing their summer pledge drive. And, you know, I might have let my membership lapse, and I've been thinking about that. And I listen to WBEZ, my NPR station, a lot. And I think it's time for me to become a member again. And I think I'm going to do that at the $5 a month level. Can you become a patron of ADHD Rewired at the $5 a month level? If you can, come on over to the website, go to ADHDrewired.com and click on the Patreon tab at the top of the page. It literally only takes a minute to sign up to become a patron. And there are different perks at different levels. You can join us once a month for $25 a month for our group coaching call. And we usually only have a handful of people who actually remember to show up, even though we have about 30 people at that level. You know, the more people who contribute on Patreon, I may be able to do more. But as a person with ADHD, trying to run an ADHD focused business, I have to decide where to put my time, and I want to keep it towards the podcast. So if you are valuing the podcast, please let me know by becoming a patron if you can. The website again to do that, ADHDrewired.com. Click on the Patreon tab, and in just a minute, you could be a patron. And just wanting you to know how much I really, really do appreciate that. So thank you. Thank you for really considering it, especially if you've been putting it off. You keep telling yourself, oh, I'm going to do it this month. I'm going to do it this week. Can you set yourself a reminder? Can you maybe do it right now? It just takes a minute. ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. And thanks. All right, we are back. So I could only imagine as I was sort of transitioning to break, how many listeners just went, wait, what? So you have a collection, and you're going to have an art show, you said, right?
I am.
A collection of erotic penis rocks.
Which is growing every day. Sorry. That just popped in. I had to say it. I love rocks. I collect rocks, but they're not just any rocks. I have different types of rock. It's just not one set. But I do have quite a few, and they're penises, and you know it when you see it. It's not kind of like abstract. We have to stare at it on the wall. I just put it in my hand. I hand it out. I hold it up to somebody, and they're like, "Holy crap, did you have that chiseled?" And I'm like, "Nope, from the beach."
So you go around finding rocks that are as phallic as possible?
Well, they just kind of jump out in front of me. And that's kind of been the story of my life. They just show up. All right, Eric, when I'm not looking, because I have heart rocks like all middle-aged mothers do. But I also have rocks that look like dragons and dogs. And I mean, can you hear my voice? I am so stoked when I'm looking for rocks. I have the most beautiful collection. I have them that look like stars. And then there you go. Sometimes there's a penis sitting there on a pile of rocks, and I find it waiting for me.
I'm wondering how well that will play as the bumper for this podcast episode.
Yeah, that might play well. I'm sending you a photo of one of my finest ones. Now, you might say, well, why are you only collecting the male? That's the only kind I seem to come across. There's nothing that looks like anything else. But moving on, that is one thing that I'm very good at, and that's rock hunting. And I'm proud of it.
When did you start with that?
A year ago. I actually started it when my mom started dying, and that was really hard for me. I also started jumping in the water, basically no matter what time of year. And I think when you're losing a loved one, it's so difficult. Sometimes you have to do something, and I would jump in the water and it would be freezing, but I really think I had to feel something other than grief. And with my mom, she just accepted me 110%. And I did some crazy stuff. I did a fitness show, or I got myself on a movie, working for a movie by bullshitting my way on. I got Leonard Skinner to climb down and give my brother-in-law, who had a terrible motorcycle accident, their hat. And I just did it all by just doing it. And she just loved it. And I'm just never going to have a fan like my mom. Unconditional.
So Jen, I'm wondering, when you're having these moments where you're kind of beating yourself up, do you think that you can really sort of tap into that your mom's voice and really integrate that to become your voice?
I will, Eric, because like before this, when I told you I was so nervous, one of the things I did was I thought of her, and she's just laughing. She's like, "Jen, is there anything you won't do?" And I think, thank you. I will, because she would be bullshit if she knew how I talk to myself. I wouldn't talk to my best friend the way I talk to myself sometimes.
And I think that's true for a lot of us.
Yeah. And I will lighten up because...
and what a gift that is, too, to think about, because so many of us, that inner critic is actually the voice of one of our parents. And I remember it was about a year ago, I started working with a new therapist that I'm still working with today. And I was sharing something with her. And she goes, "Hold on a second, Eric." She's like, whose voice? I'm hearing two things right now.
Oh,
and whose
wow.
voice is that? And, it was a really good question because it wasn't mine.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot.
So I think that that just sounds like a really wonderful person in your life that was able to see the good in you and have that true unconditional love. And, for some people, it's not just, despite of what you're doing, but it may be even because of it.
Exactly. Yeah. She always just met me where I was. And, you mourn them. And I was just thinking the other day, sometimes when you're losing someone, you're like, "Oh, I sometimes feel jealous of these people who hate their parents. And I'm like, you know better than that. They're worth it. They're worth the mourning. But she was, and I do, it does help me. You're right. I do think of her a lot and what she would want me to be happy. I've always done writing and I stopped for a long time and I've started again. But as with ADHD, I'm not writing a novel. I'm just writing short little stories. Don't we just overthink and I'm learning to scale back. I'm learning to say no. And I just want to mention this. I don't know if other people notice it, but once you get diagnosed and you start to work with yourself, some people resist the changes in you because I don't make as many commitments and I don't say yes to everything. And I really pace myself more. And some people are like irritated.
Well, when you say, what is that? When you say no to yourself, it's because you're saying yes to, or saying no to somebody else, you say yes to yourself.
Yeah.
So I was also curious. You said that there was something you invented, but you didn't follow through on. Yeah,
I have a great invention. In fact, I won't even say it. And I actually got a friend who did not have ADHD to do the what do you call it? The prep of it to make it into something. And we met with an attorney and a patent attorney. And he said there were two things in the make that looked like it, but now there isn't. So I got to call my buddy, Joe, because he's the one I'm the enthusiasm. I'm the front person, but he's the one who can get the other stuff done. And also, GoDaddy, where you can buy domain names. Uh-huh. They've made hundreds off of me with my ideas because I'll have an idea and I'll get a name for it. And I'll forget. I own like 8 awesome business names. Eric, we need a job where we can just think up awesome stuff.
Just ideas. And, we're like, and don't have to actually execute. Just the ideas.
Yes. And on your reputation alone, people will pay you and then you'll tell them it. Yes. Anyone who needs that, call Eric and I.
So I think there's just so much here from a story of kind of resilience and having so many things in your life that could have knocked you down, and he kept getting back up. And
I did, like one of those bozo clowns.
I loved those things when I was a kid.
I love those things. Yeah, there's been a lot. I was thinking one more thing.
There's always one more thing. That should be like the sign off of the podcast. Oh, wait. And one more thing. If there's one more thing you want to give listeners, what would that be?
It's self-centered. I work now with Alzheimer's people and you would think you have ADHD. How can you stand that? Like one-on-one. And I was thinking about it, but they're so amazing. And every day is a new day with them. And you can try new things with them and some things work and some things don't. But anyways, that's off subject. What would I leave people with? I don't know. My Adderall just wore out, so I got nothing.
And then I think we should wrap it up right there then. When the Adderall runs out, the show is over.
Yeah, it's all over. Just binge watch Seinfeld. You'll feel better. Or The Office. Also, I want to thank Connect Staple in Somerville, Mass. for giving me the podcast studio. It's amazing. And if anyone ever needs it, it's here.
Awesome. And if you could send us a couple pictures of your rock hard penis collection, that would be great.
I absolutely will. They're copyright. So, don't go doing too much with them. I love you, Eric.
Genji, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Anytime. Take care, everybody out there. Hang in there.
This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening, and congratulations for making it to the end. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. The website is ADHDrewired.com. You can find summaries and additional resources for each episode. You can apply to our free and secret Facebook community. You can learn more about ADHD Rewired's intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups, and sign up for my email newsletter to get exclusive content you won't get anywhere else. It's all at ADHDrewired.com. While you're there, click the Patreon button. If you're a regular listener and you're still listening to my voice, consider making a monthly contribution by becoming a patron through our Patreon page. If you are able to financially support my work, it would mean a lot. This show is free to listeners, but it is not free to produce. And patrons get really cool perks. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Tivers. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/ADHD rewired. If you're a coach, therapist, or related professional, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Eric Tivers. You can also subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube. And you can subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube and see select interviews and some other videos I've posted. Podcasts change lives. You can make a difference in someone's life by spreading the word about this podcast. Mention it in your online communities on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or wherever you hang out online. And be sure to share it with your friends and your family and your clients, as well as your coaches, therapists, and doctors. And if you're a coach, therapist, doctor, or ADHD support group leader, and you would like a pack of podcast postcards to hand out, you can request those at my website, ADHDrewired.com. And if you're a member of CHAD or any other ADHD support group, please be sure to tell them about this podcast. You can even show them how to download it on their phone. You know, you might be the person that turns somebody on to a podcast for the very first time. And if you really love this episode, please consider hitting share on your podcast player. I'm only one person, and I count on you to help me spread the message. One of the biggest things that you can do to support this podcast and to help other people discover it is to leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts, on Stitcher, or any other podcast app that accepts ratings and reviews. And don't forget to hit subscribe on this podcast on your podcast app so new episodes are automatically pushed to your favorite podcast app. Looking for more ways to listen and learn? Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ADHD rewired. Not sure where to start? In no particular order. Check out Atomic Habits by James Clear, The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk, 10% Happier, and Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics. These are both by Dan Harris. Change Your Questions and Change Your Life by Marilee G. Adams. The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Vaden. The Four Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. Do you have trouble asking for help? Listen to The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. It's one of the best produced audiobooks I've ever heard. If you're looking for something a little bit more, say, magical, I unexpectedly fell in love with the Harry Potter series. And I don't usually listen to those kinds of books, and I loved it. And of course, if you haven't yet boarded the Brene Brown bus yet, check out Brene Brown's books, starting with The Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, The Power of Vulnerability. And if you're an entrepreneur or leader in any capacity, check out her 2018 book, Dare to Lead. And Brene still is my most wanted guest, so if you know Brene, and you would be so kind to make that connection for me, I would be really, really grateful. You know who else I would like to have on the show? You. Click the podcast tab at ADHDrewired.com and then click the Be a Guest button at the top of that page and schedule a 15-minute pre-interview. This is Eric Tivers, reminding you to keep learning, keep growing, and keep connecting. Self-care is not selfish, and no matter what gets done or doesn't get done, at the end of the day, you are still enough. And no matter how hard it feels, we can do hard things. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.